For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
People are pointing to so-called similarity between the positions that China has taken and India has taken on the entire issue, by abstaining at the votes of the UN. But the point is that both are prompted by entirely different circumstances. As far as the Chinese are concerned, and this is important to underline, there is an ideological kinship between China and Russia. The leaders of both, that means Xi Jinping and Putin, are both creatures of their respective communist parties. Xi Jinping has nurtured the relationship and enhanced it with Putin personally and with Russia. And I'm sure that when, in fact, it is almost certain that when Putin went to Beijing on the sidelines of the Beijing Winter Olympics for the summit with Xi Jinping, he briefed him on what his plans for Ukraine were, or at least gave him a fairly detailed insight into what he was planning. And he got a full-throated backing from Xi Jinping. So that is one thing. The second is in China, the media is very tightly controlled, as you know, and including the social media. And whatever we see and read coming out on that is all supportive of Russia. There are abuses hurled at Ukraine, abusive remarks about Ukrainians, and things like that by the ordinary Chinese netizen, obviously, because that is what he has been fed. There are also other remarks, and including, mind you, the discussion between Biden and Xi Jinping, where Xi Jinping basically said, we can't do anything, you sort out the problem. And he justified Russia's actions by saying that their national interests were threatened. So the Chinese position is very clear. As far as we are concerned, the fact is, and here I would say unfortunate fact is, that we are dependent on Russia for almost 60% of or 55% of our military technology and supplies. And that really is something that we need to be conscious of. Which is why we've been careful, apart from the technology assistance that we are getting from them. But we have started diversifying, and we have to be sensitive. The other point is that this is being viewed as something between Russia and Ukraine and the Western powers, which doesn't involve us really. Neither, if I may make a point of saying that when the Chinese came into India in April 2020, when they massed their forces and ingressed, and also since then, they've kept about 50,000-60,000 troops in readiness on our borders. There hasn't been any noise of support, any voice of support coming from the West either. That may or may not be a calculation of the government, but that certainly is something that Indian strategists do note.
And this narrative of that is being put out there, that you're on the same side of the fence as China when it comes to what is happening in Europe, that is the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
That's a very mischievous narrative, Amitabh. That's what's being put out by the Chinese. They're doing it systematically. Wang himself has made a couple of remarks like this. Chinese academics have made these remarks saying that we are on the same side. We are certainly not. As I've explained to you, there are two different reasons why we are voting that way, and along with about 35 others. And as far as the oil is concerned, which people are talking about, the US is buying oil from Russia still and spending about $600 million a day. Germany is buying oil. In fact, they have said, we are not going to apply sanctions on Russia as far as oil are concerned. They're buying a huge amount daily basis. So, you can't have double standards. And this propaganda that the Chinese are putting out is designed for two reasons. One, to deflect the possibility of sanctions against them by being applied by the US and the West. And that's becoming a stronger likelihood as the days go by. And the second, to try and drive a wedge between the US and us. That hasn't happened. But we have to be careful of that. The Pakistanis too, you may have noticed, have now started saying the same thing. So it's obviously a programmed effort at creating mischief and deception as far as we are concerned.
Just that last point that you brought up, it dovetails into what somebody who calls themselves your enemy says. Is China trying to step in between the Quad members with clear differences coming out between India and other members in the light of the Ukraine crisis? We've seen the another virtual summit of the Quad leaders. There was in Melbourne, an in-person one. Japan, there's going to be hopefully in-person summit again. How do you see the Quad standing up in the current scenario?
Well, let's be quite honest. I mean, China is certainly trying to create differences between India and the Quad. They do realize that India is probably the key element in Quad taking shape and putting paid to Chinese intentions in the coming years. But at the same time, we need to realize that word used by quote unquote your enemy were differences. There are really no differences. The parties concerned are still talking to each other. They're still, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida came here. There was a lengthy thing. Yes, there was a point of difference, but it wasn't central to their discussions, and neither with Australia. So I think the Quad is intact. It's moving ahead. There will be differences off and on, but that's what democracies are all about, and everyone is conscious of that.